It's actually okay for someone to be let down. It's a normal human emotion. It's not the end of the world, and it's not our responsibility. So take a moment to think of a situation where you've avoided setting a boundary because you were sure it would spark a worst case scenario. On a scale of 1 to 10, when you get it out of your brain, how likely is it that it's truly as bad as you imagine? If you are not 100% sure it's going to blow up, there's plenty of room to question whether your brain is just doing what brains do, leaping to conclusions to try to keep you safe. Welcome to the Choose Better Thoughts podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Doyle, certified life and leadership coach, and I'm here to help you make your complex life feel easy. Every episode, we tackle one subconscious limiting belief. You will leave this space having shifted your mindset to level up your career, embrace a Zen-like style of parenting, and finally savor the life you've worked so hard to create. So pop in your earbuds and let's do some coaching. Do you ever catch yourself saying yes, even when you're mentally and emotionally at full capacity? This is almost a rhetorical question, am I right? Because we all just do this. We jump at an opportunity and responsibility almost reflexively. It feels like it's in our bones. A sign-up sheet used to be like catnip to me, and I was never really conscious of why. For most of my life, I never paused to untangle whether I was doing something because I actually wanted to or because I was just believing I should. This is because I actually get a lot of dopamine for doing what I think I should do. So if your plate is also too full and you don't know what to do about it, or if the very thought of saying no reflexively makes your stomach drop, then you're in the right place. Today, we're tackling the subconscious limiting belief that goes like this. When I set limits, I lose approval. I started to set boundaries in earnest about a year ago. So picture this. I just decided to create a sacred morning routine between 5:30 and 6:30 a.m. Time for journaling, a cup of coffee, and maybe a quick workout all before the kids wake up. Except I had a problem. I also felt compelled to manage every detail for my children from the moment they opened their eyes. I was so subconsciously worried about my partner thinking I was slacking or that my kids would think I was uncaring if I wasn't present for every moment. So rather than asking my husband to handle the kids for that 1 hour, I just didn't consistently honor my commitment to myself. I would hop out of bed, start my morning practice, but the second I heard footsteps or one of my daughters calling for breakfast, I would abandon my routine. I would scramble to feed the kids, find their clothes, get their teeth brushed, all on top of still trying to squeeze in that time for myself, wildly unsuccessfully, of course. By the time the kids were out the door, I was exhausted and surprisingly resentful, thinking subconsciously, why do I have to do everything myself? Worst of all, I wasn't even really showing up for my partner or my kids how I wanted to, which is in a calm, present way. Nor was I taking care of my own needs. No one was winning. I also wasn't investing time in my daughter's independence because I was rushing them along, which is something I'm really having to double down on right now. I have now figured out that my lack of commitment to my own boundary wasn't about being the best mom possible. It was actually about that knot in my stomach whenever I thought of letting my family down. I didn't want to experience that emotion, and I didn't want to make the ask. I was subconsciously thinking that I might be risking my family's disappointment or losing their opinion of me as the capable one. But I didn't pause to investigate this for almost a year. This is a small everyday scenario, but it's actually a perfect snapshot of how we overload ourselves. Sometimes a boundary is saying no to your own unrealistic expectations of yourself rather than responding to someone else's request. We think that we're doing the right thing by handling it all, but in reality, we're setting ourselves up for burnout and, even in my case, resentment toward our loved ones. That's the cycle I want to break today, turning that guilt and fear of letting someone down into genuine, self assured calm. So let me ask you this. What's one recent scenario where you tried to do it all? Maybe an early workout like me or a work project, and refused to ask for help or shift a timeline because you didn't want to disappoint someone. Did your body tense up, or did you feel a pang of dread when you realized you needed help? That is the sign right there. You're overriding your own boundary to avoid the discomfort of the feeling. So let's zoom in on that fear loop a little more and see what's really going on inside of your head. Most of us aren't even aware we're caught up in it because it sounds so logical in the moment. I have to stay late at work or my boss will be upset. I have to keep my house perfectly tidy or my guests won't have a good time. I have to stick to my intense workout plan or I will be mean to myself when I look in the mirror. For many of us, the fear isn't just that they'll be upset, it's that we'll no longer be seen as someone who can handle everything. That thought alone can keep us saying yes far beyond our physical, mental, and emotional capacity. The super sneaky part, we don't walk around thinking, I'm terrified of disappointing people. Instead, we have these little justifications like it's just easier if I do it, or I'm the only one who knows how, or I don't want to be selfish. This happens automatically because our brains are wired to avoid social rejection. Historically, rejection could mean separation from the group, literal danger. So your brain basically shouts, keep everyone happy so you don't get kicked out of the tribe. Yes, this might have made sense when lions were chasing us, but now it mostly just gets in the way of us living our actual lives. In day-to-day modern life, it often leads to over-giving. The moment you get this out of your subconscious and become aware that your hesitation to set a boundary is actually driven by fear rather than genuine love or generosity, you can unlock the ability to make a different choice. You can realize that you're not actually solving a crisis. You're just avoiding a feeling. In my morning routine story, I realized that the second I heard the kids, my mind would go, don't let your family be disappointed. Go fix everything. That was fear-based, not love-based. Once I named it, oh, I'm just scared because of what I'm thinking about what my family might be thinking, it became easier to pause and ask whether my fear was founded. And even if it was, whether I could handle the outcome. The thing is, we're only human. Like a closet full of old clothes that keeps us from maturing our wardrobe, we have to make space in our minds before we can learn something new. When we hold tightly to the belief that saying yes keeps us valued, we leave no room to consider how saying no might actually deepen our relationships and our own well-being. When you can metaphorically empty your closet of styles that no longer reflect the vision of where you're headed, you might finally be able to make space for a calmer way of thinking. So right now, pause and think about the next time you might feel tempted to say yes or skip your own plans to keep from disappointing someone. If your mind instantly says, no one else can do this but me, or they'll be so upset if I don't do it, I want you to make a mental note. Simply noticing those words as they pop up is your first step to breaking free from the automatic yes. Now that you see where your hesitation to limits comes from, let's talk about the next step, letting yourself feel the emotions tied to it, especially those uncomfortable ones like guilt or fear or shame. Because let's be real, the second we suspect someone might be disappointed or upset with us, a whole wave of emotion can wash over us. And what do we usually do? We scramble to avoid it by saying yes, even if we're already stretched too thin. But what if, just for a moment, you allow that pang of worry to be there without instantly trying to fix it? Instead of going into action mode, you could simply say to yourself, yep, my heart's racing a bit. I'm afraid of how my friend might react. By naming it, you create a small space between you and the emotion and a small space between the emotion and your action. This doesn't mean the fear vanishes. It just means you're acknowledging it rather than being controlled by it. And here's why it matters. So much of our boundary setting struggles comes from wanting to dodge uncomfortable feelings. We would rather be exhausted and drained than confront the feeling of fear of someone's disappointment. But those few moments of discomfort are definitely a fair trade if it frees you from constantly living for other people's expectations. Just like stepping into cold water, the initial jolt of saying no or delegating a task might feel intense, but you will adjust. The fear or guilt won't last as long as you think, and you might even find you're stronger and more self-assured on the other side. So before we move on, I want you to picture a moment this week where you know a boundary is in order. Imagine saying it out loud, then feel your body's reaction. Let that reaction exist. Take a breath and remind yourself you're allowed to experience a little discomfort in service of your bigger well-being. Okay, now that we've explored how to let guilt or fear be there without letting it hijack your actions, let's go one step further. Let's actually look at what really happens when someone is disappointed. Because that loud, anxious voice in your head is telling you if I set a boundary and someone gets upset, it's a disaster. A lot of us equate disappointment with catastrophe. Like if someone's unhappy, we must have messed up horribly. But the truth is, other people's feelings belong to them. I'm sure most of you have learned this in therapy. Sure, they may feel bummed or annoyed, but that doesn't automatically mean your boundary was wrong. In fact, it might be the healthiest thing for everyone involved. I remember a client, let's call her Sarah, who was nervous to tell her sister she couldn't babysit. Instead of getting back to her right away, she procrastinated on the communication. We discovered together she was procrastinating because she was subconsciously worried that this one no might change their dynamic, even if it was only for just a few days or weeks. And she didn't want that discomfort. But when Sarah finally said, "Hey, I can't watch the kids," her sister responded with a casual, "No worries, I'll figure something out." And even if her sister had felt disappointed or responded differently, Sarah had coached herself to a place where she knew she could handle any outcome. This is a huge lesson that I had to learn myself, and I keep having to relearn every day. It's actually okay for someone to be let down. It's a normal human emotion. It's not the end of the world, and it's not our responsibility. So take a moment to think of a situation where you've avoided setting a boundary because you were sure it would spark a worst case scenario. Maybe you pictured your friend being devastated if you skipped her invite, or your parents guilt tripping you forever if you didn't come home for a holiday. On a scale of 1 to 10, when you get it out of your brain, how likely is it that it's truly as bad as you imagine? If you are not 100% sure it's going to blow up, there's plenty of room to question whether your brain is just doing what brains do, leaping to conclusions to try to keep you safe. And here's something else I'd like to offer you. Boundaries are not cement walls. They're more like signposts guiding you toward a more balanced, more present life. There's a Buddhist teaching I really love about the finger pointing to the moon. The finger, which is your boundary, is not the ultimate goal. The moon, which is your peaceful, authentic life, is. We can get so hung up on the boundary itself that we forget it's pointing us toward more ease and real connection. So don't be afraid to revise your boundaries and hold them loosely when it serves you. Here's a powerful exercise for you. Write down your absolute worst case thoughts, like they'll never speak to me again, or they'll think I'm a horrible person. And then ask yourself, could the opposite actually be true? By naming that possibility, you weaken the grip of the catastrophic fantasy. You also show respect for others' capacity to manage their own emotions. They're allowed to feel disappointed, and you're allowed to set a limit. All right, so we've reached a pivotal moment. You've identified the fear loop. You've practiced allowing those cringy feelings of guilt or worry. You've shed light on and started to gently question the catastrophic assumptions around others' disappointment. Now it's time to align yourself with a new, more empowering belief that actually serves you and those around you. Sometimes jumping straight from when I set limits, I lose approval to boundaries are amazing and everyone loves them can feel too big. That's why I love to use a bridge thought. Something like, it's possible my boundaries help everyone. It's gentle. It acknowledges you're not fully convinced yet, but you're open to the idea. So in my case, I tell myself, it's possible when I honor my morning routine, everyone benefits. I still have to practice this thought almost every morning, and that is okay. I don't waste much mental energy thinking about it. I have it as a tool, and I get back to my morning practice. Ultimately, we want to get to something like boundaries benefit me and those I love. Why is this so powerful? Because when you respect your own capacity, you're able to show up more wholeheartedly for others. You have more energy, more patience, and fewer hidden resentments like I did. If you're consistently saying yes out of fear, you're actually just doing a disservice to your relationships. A boundary set with honesty and kindness can foster deeper trust and connection than forced compliance or subtle unconscious attempts at manipulation ever could. I want you to take a moment right now and actually visualize yourself standing firmly in this new belief. Boundaries benefit me and those I love. Picture a specific boundary. Maybe it's your morning routine, or logging off work at a certain time, or saying no to a volunteer request. Can you visualize how you might stand a little taller and speak a little calmer, more collected in tone? Imagine how others might respond to that version of you. And imagine how by doing so, you might empower another woman to uphold her own boundary. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Recognizing the fear loop, allowing tough emotions, analyzing disappointment, and shifting your mindset toward a healthier belief about boundaries. Now it's time for action. Here's the challenge. Pick one boundary, just one, to set or honor this week. Maybe it's powering down at 6, not answering texts during dinner, or safeguarding that morning routine like me, as if your sanity depends on it. Step 1, write it down. Put the boundary in one sentence. I stop working at 6 p.m. no matter what. Step 2, communicate. If someone else needs to know, tell them, hey, just a heads up, I won't be available after 6. If you need to remember, put a note in place that you will be able to see. Step 3, honor it. When 6 p.m. rolls around, do what you said you'd do. If guilt or worry comes up, let it be there. And remember why you're doing this. Yes, someone might react. They might grumble or roll their eyes. Let them. Chances are it won't be nearly as bad as your imagination might be telling you. Even if they're disappointed, That's not automatically your fault or your responsibility to fix. Step 4, celebrate the win. Seriously, notice how it feels to protect your own well-being. Did you gain extra time for yourself or your family? Did you have more mental space for creativity or rest? This is what boundaries do. They help reclaim your energy, and you want your brain to be able to see that. The truth is, even a small boundary shows huge growth. You're proving that you matter, that your needs belong on the list, maybe even near the top of the list. If it feels awkward, that is normal. Keep going. And if you want extra support as you put these boundaries into practice, check out my Choose Better Thoughts coaching program. It's a space where we tackle real life issues and practice boundaries until they become second nature. That's all for this episode. We've gone from people pleasing to a place of inner peace, from the fear of letting others down to realizing boundaries can benefit everyone. I'm genuinely proud of you for doing this work. Next time, we'll dig into another sneaky limiting belief that might be quietly running your life. Until then, remember, it's possible my boundaries help everyone. Keep that in your back pocket, practice the steps, and watch how your life shifts. You've got this. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Choose Better Thoughts podcast. If you found these ideas helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who is also craving more confidence, connection, and calm. For more free resources and a deeper dive into my step-by-step formula for making your complex life feel easy, head over to my website at choosebetterthoughts.com. Until next time, remember that you're already there, already enough, and your goals are as good as done. You've